Well, I think what we've seen over the last few years is that a number of the major emerging market countries have moved ahead very rapidly in economic growth. And certainly this is true of most Latin American countries. And I think it's fair to say we're entering a period where the emerging markets are going to be a very important force, much more so than they've been in the past 20 or 30 years in the global landscape. What we've seen over the last few years in Latin America is a tremendous surge in growth and also in the export potential to other areas of the world. I think all of this bodes well for Latin America over the longer term. However, I think more time, money, and dedication must be given to areas like education and health and technology for Latin America to not only secure but to increase its importance and position in the world economy. Well, I think there are a couple of things about this crisis, and I've seen an awful lot in my long career in finance and banking. In the past, we've often seen these global crises emanating from the emerging markets. This time, it didn't come that way. It came from the U.S. and spread through other markets, including the emerging markets. So I think we have a different type of crisis we're looking at today. But if you ask me where we are in this particular crisis, I think we're at best halfway through. And I think there are several reasons for that. One, I think we've seen a dislocation in the credit markets worldwide, and particularly in the developed world, which we have not seen in past crises. Second of all, I think it's fair to say that the U.S. housing problem, which is the root of this, started with subprime, migrating to other areas of housing, still has a long ways to go, and I don't see that, frankly, ending until the beginning of next year. And in addition to this, we're starting to see in the United States this problem of housing migrating to other areas of consumer finance and credit. And the consumer is something like only approximately 70% of the U.S. economy. So I think that we are either in recession, going to be in recession, or we're going to be in a period of no growth for the next 2 or 3 quarters. Well, first of all, I don't believe in decoupling. I think what got us to where we are was a tremendous surge and increase in trade and globalization. And so I think we're more tied together than we were a decade ago. Having said that, I think we've seen tremendous progress in Latin America on the economic side. The banking systems in Latin America are much stronger than I can remember in my career. That's one. Second of all, I think if you take a look at the reserve levels of the central banks, they're all at record levels throughout Latin America. Third of all, I think you've seen a lot of progress on institution building over the last few years that we didn't see at the time of the LDC debt crisis and some of the other crises that passed through Latin America. And so I think what we're seeing today is strong growth buttressed by a lot of strength in other areas of the economy and institutions in Latin America. What should Latin America do as we see this crisis spread worldwide? I think they've got to continue to push ahead with their reforms and institution building. I think this is key. So I believe that that this time around, Latin America will come out much better than they would have in the past. Well, obviously, the slowdown in the U.S. and the campaign in China to reduce inflation will mean a slowing somewhat of the Chinese economy. So there will be an impact. However, I think the longer-term future and relationship between China and Latin America is already being established, and so I am very optimistic going forward. It's very interesting what we've seen happen between China and Latin America. Over the last 5 years, we've seen China get very involved in Latin America, particularly on the commodity side. And this has covered many, many countries in Latin America. So the trade's increased dramatically. But you also see other types of economic relationships being developed. For instance, the Embraer plant in China to build airplanes. So it's not strictly commodities, although it has been mostly commodities. But China is very interested in increasing trade relations between Latin America beyond the commodity side. And this is in the interest, I think, of Latin America because it's a new source of both trade and investment going forward for Latin America. So I think that this is a particular relationship that needs to be developed. Latin America has to be careful that China is not just interested on the commodity side, because Latin America has a lot more to export than just commodities. On the other hand, I think China is very interested in investing in a whole host of different areas, including infrastructure, as well as commodities in Latin America. So I think if it's worked by both sides in the proper fashion, it can be a win-win situation.